I am just excited to have Dr. Heath Burns in our presence tonight on the show. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Burns because Dr. Burns is serious about his purpose and his profession, and you can see it in his life, and he's been demonstrating that since he's been in the city of Abilene. So I'm just glad to have you here with us, Doctor. I know your schedule is extremely busy. Thank you for being with us. And I hope you heard a little bit about my story because I have some questions I'd like to ask and maybe get some insight on how much of this is still going on in classrooms. I believe that I'm not the only person who've had to deal with the challenges I've had. For example, I think that there are people with learning disabilities. For example, dyslexia, or some people who may have had other learning disabilities, but yet they find themselves feeling worthless, feeling rejected, abandoned, and as a result, they result to delinquent behavior. And that's what happened with me. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom, I have these poor reading and writing skills. At the time, I'm a teenager. I don't know I have these poor reading and writing skills. All I know is I refuse to put myself in a position where I would have to read out in the open, publicly, and there were teenage girls there, and if I messed up on a word or a sentence, they would laugh at me. And so the natural thing for me to do is just to become delinquent and disruptive in the classroom. I wouldn't pay attention, and I would just distract the class, and eventually I dropped out of school for 5.5 years. But I later looked at it. In many cases, I think I was almost pushed out of school because it was more convenient to get me out of the classroom, since I was a distraction, than to let me stay in. What do you think? Can you comment on some of those thoughts?
Dr. Roach, I would love to. What you're describing is not surprising at all to me. Let me first say that the thing that I love most about my profession is children, as simple as that. In fact, I think that I am closest to my God and my Savior when I serve children. I think that's exactly what I was born to do.
Purpose.
And it's a purpose. I think what you're describing when you describe little Tony Roach is not uncommon in public education. I think our system, unfortunately, not Abilene's system, but public education, is built to embrace and reward the compliant child. The child that does what he's told, the child that looks the same, that complies with rules. Now, compliance is important, but compliance isn't what we're all about in education. We should be about identifying where students are, what their needs are, what their emotional development levels are, where they're at in their state of self-love, and help teach and guide them from wherever they are.
That is so on point to me because one of my best friends dropped out of school with me, and his name is Richard Barnes. Richard is almost a genius. I mean, he is extremely intelligent, and I like to think I could just kind of keep up with him as a friend. It wasn't that we couldn't think, and it wasn't that we didn't have the capacity, I think, for sure now to learn, but because of the poor reading and writing skills, we became delinquent.
Dr. Roach, and where do reading and writing skills come from? They come from home life and rearing. So it has nothing to do with a child's capacity. It has to do with the context in which they were raised. So if I take 25 kids and put them in a classroom, oftentimes teachers and administrators make the mistake of identifying the smart kids or the better kids based upon what they bring with them to school.
Yes.
Instead of reaching into the child and finding out what's undiscovered and what's within that child. It's not surprising to me at all that you can tell lots of stories about undiscovered talent and capacity in kids that are missed because they come from environments and contexts where their natural gifts, where God's graces haven't had an opportunity to manifest themselves.
So it requires then a personal involvement on behalf of the teachers, where they have to go beyond just teaching material, passing information, but getting involved with the kid's life.
Dr. Roach, you're talking my language. I think the mission of public education is very similar to Christ's mission. I think public education is the great equalizer. Yes. To identify those that have holes, that have the least, and to help compensate for them. The easy path is to teach the willing and compliant learner. I think the service and the mission of public education is to identify those diamonds in the rough, those kids who are lashing out and are non-compliant, those little mean Tony Roaches, to find what's in their heart, and instead of looking to just what comes out of their mouth and what their behaviors are. Sometimes those are two very different things.
Especially as I look back on it, it's surprising to me that it seemed like it was more convenient to push me out of the classroom than to keep me in the classroom. And yet I can understand a teacher feeling a little uncomfortable because you don't know what to do with that kid. And but I think, though, if someone would have taken more time with me and helped me to discover what my real challenge was, I felt worthless. I felt rejected. And I think there are many students who are dealing with this old self-love tendency that's causing them to do negative, sabotaging, defeating things, and yet they really want to love themselves, but they don't know how.
Yet again, you're nailing it, Dr. Roach. And I think that marks the difference between a mediocre teacher and a spectacular teacher. The mediocre teacher says, look at Tony and all that he doesn't bring to the table. Let's get him out of here so we can efficiently educate the compliant child. And the special teacher identifies those kids that are missing something, that are a little broken, that are non-compliant for reasons, that are lashing out for that attention, and they love them, and that love is unconditional. The expectations have to be unconditional.
Now, you know, God would call that the Hebrew Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. And this is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And then the Hebrews were taught to teach this to the children. Teach them what? As I learn to love God, I learn to love myself. And as I learn to love myself, I learn to love my fellow man. And that becomes the basis of the home life, the family stability, and, if you will, it affects the school systems.
Tony, I think maybe the most important lesson we can teach our children, above even math and language arts and those type things, is that there is nothing that they can do to make them unworthy of our love and our support.
Yes.
Now, they can earn negative consequences, but they will be worthy of our love and support just by being here and being one of God's children.
If parents and teachers learn new self-love, then it will automatically transfer into the classrooms. Steve, you have a child in the independent school district.
I do. She's in 4th grade and just loves it. Does great. She's a straight A student. But one of the questions I had, just personal, was how does span of control? Is that a factor involved in schools? Sometimes you think in the inner city schools you got so many students per teacher. How does that work in Abilene, do you think?
Sure. Abilene's an urban school district. I think sometimes because we're in West Texas, folks fail to realize that we're a 65% economically disadvantaged school district. We're extremely impoverished, and we're a majority-minority school district. I think, Steve, what teachers and what educators have to do is we have to claim our identity in Abilene by the way we serve not your child necessarily, or even my 4 children or Tony's children, because those kids, because of that parental involvement, is going to get what they need. But we have to claim our identity by how we serve and compensate for those children that have the least. The more Tony Roaches that we can love and reach out to and re-engage in the education system to help them learn that new self-love, the better off we're going to be. Because the fact of the matter is the Steve's kids and the Heath's kids, they still need teaching support and school support, but they're probably going to be okay.
Well, I was the bad Steve when I went to school, and so the fact that, just somebody that was involved in my life, a teacher that had new self-love that can inspire that in me, makes a world of difference.
I think it makes all the difference in the world. If listeners take anything out of this message, and if our teachers take anything out of this message if they hear it, I hope they take from me that I believe in them, that there is nothing that they can't overcome to help reach and touch our children, especially our most broken ones.